All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving headfirst into the crazy world of cognitive biases.
Yeah, these mental shortcuts.
We're using The Psychology of Human Misjudgment by Charles T. Munger as our roadmap for this.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and think of it kind of like a crash course
Yeah.
in how to outsmart your own brain.
It's like, we all have these tendencies, these kind of like built-in
Right.
kind of mental shortcuts that sometimes, don't really work in our favor.
Lead us astray.
Lead us astray. Yeah, exactly. And so Munger, I think what's really fascinating about his approach is he doesn't just like list out the biases, he gives you a framework for understanding them.
Yeah, a framework.
Right, and he draws inspiration from some really interesting places like ants and magicians.
Ants, and that's an interesting combo.
Right.
Ants and magicians. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, he starts with this this ant experiment, this really simple but powerful ant experiment.
Right.
Imagine like a live ant. Okay.
Getting rejected from its colony.
Okay.
Just because it has the pheromones of a dead ant painted on it.
Wait, seriously, they reject a perfectly good ant based on like a smell. That's nuts.
Right.
It's like, hello, it's me, I'm alive, but I smell a little off.
Yeah, it's like it highlights how ingrained some of these automatic responses are, even in like these tiny creatures like ants.
Right, yeah.
And it underscores the point that like us humans, we're not so different.
Right, we're just like big ants.
Yeah, we have these kind of pre-programmed behaviors, these tendencies that aren't always beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Yep.
So where do the magicians fit in?
So Munger talks about how a magician can make the Statue of Liberty seemingly vanish just by subtly manipulating our perception.
Right.
So they'll rotate the platform the audience is on so slowly
that it's like below our conscious awareness.
I see.
And then when they open a curtain where the statue should be, poof, it's gone.
Oh, that's wild. It's like our brains are playing tricks on us.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's an illusion, but it's still like, whoa, what just happened?
Right.
Yeah.
And the susceptibility to these subtle shifts and stuff, it's not just with our senses.
Right.
It affects like how we think and make decisions too.
Oh, yeah.
And so Munger, he's identified 25 of these cognitive biases.
25?
Yeah.
Okay, lay them on me.
We're going to break down each one.
I'm ready. Hit me with bias number 1.
Okay, number 1.
What is it?
Reward and punishment super response tendency.
Oh, okay, that's a mouthful.
I know, right?
But I feel like I kind of get what it's getting at. Like,
it's all about incentives, right?
The power of carrots and sticks.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, have you ever changed your behavior like even slightly because of
absolutely,
some kind of reward or punishment?
Yeah, I mean, who hasn't?
Yeah.
Like, think about loyalty programs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They give you those points for every purchase, and suddenly I'm like, oh,
right,
I don't even need this thing.
They're gonna get those points.
Yeah, gonna get those points.
Yeah, and Munger argues that we often underestimate just how powerful those incentives can be.
Right.
He uses this fascinating case study of Federal Express to illustrate this point.
Oh, yeah, Federal Express.
They were having trouble with their night shift efficiency until they changed their compensation structure.
I think I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
Didn't their productivity like skyrocket after that?
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
So instead of paying them hourly, they started paying them per shift completed.
Oh, I see.
And so suddenly the employees were motivated to work quickly and accurately because their reward was directly tied to their performance.
Makes sense, yeah.
It completely changed the game.
Right. That's a great example.
Yeah.
I've also noticed, though, that like an over-reliance on incentives can backfire sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what about those situations where people get so focused on the reward that they ignore everything else, even ethics?
Yeah, Munger calls this incentive-caused bias.
Okay, incentive-caused bias.
Yeah, it's when the desire for the reward, whether it's money or recognition or whatever, distorts our judgment and leads us to make bad decisions.
Like those stories about salespeople who push unnecessary products just to hit their quotas and get that bonus.
Exactly. Or think about like the surgeon that Munger talks about, who genuinely believed that removing the gallbladder was like the solution to every medical problem.
Like it was a cure-all, right?
Yeah.
The gallbladder's the problem.
Take it out. It's got to go.
And Munger argues that this was partly driven by self-interest, right?
Right.
The surgeon was so convinced of his approach And it was financially lucrative.
That they kind of ignored.
The potential downside.
Yeah, the potential harm.
That's scary. That's really scary.
It is a little scary.
Yeah.
And it's why Munger stresses the importance of strong ethical frameworks and systems that discourage bad behavior.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he even highlights simple things like cash registers, which make it harder for people to, like, skim money.
Smart.
Right. As like brilliant inventions that prevent dishonesty.
Like forcing honesty.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're trying to, like, outsmart our brains, what's the takeaway here?
I think the takeaway is always be aware of the power of incentives.
Okay.
Both good and bad.
Okay.
When you're analyzing a situation, ask yourself who benefits from this? What are their motivations?
Right. Yeah. So don't just, like, blindly take advice, especially from someone who stands to gain from it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Always got to double check. Think critically.
Think critically, yeah.
Yeah.
And remember that even good people can be swayed by strong incentives.
Right.
So
stay vigilant.
Stay vigilant, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. On to bias number 2. What's next?
Number 2 is liking-loving tendency.
Liking-loving tendency. Okay.
Which, you know, at first might seem pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I mean, we tend to favor the people that we like and love, right?
It's basic human nature.
Yeah.
But Munger argues that it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
This tendency can make us overlook flaws, be overly compliant with someone's wishes, and even, like, distort facts to fit our affectionate narratives.
Like those parents who refuse to believe their child is bullying other kids even when they're, like, shown evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their love and loyalty can cloud their judgment and make it difficult to see the situation objectively.
Right. So I guess the key here is to recognize that our affections, they can really, like...
It can color our perception.
Yeah, color our perceptions.
Yeah.
And to really try to strive for that.
More balanced view.
Yeah, that more balanced view, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard, yeah.
Especially with the people we love.
Yeah, and remember, this tendency doesn't just apply to, like, personal relationships. It also extends to brands, products, even ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Think about, like, brand loyalty, right? Like, how sometimes that can prevent us from...
Trying new things.
Trying something new,
Yeah, even if it might be better.
Yeah.
It's like getting stuck in a rut.
Totally.
Even when there might be something amazing just around the corner.
Yeah.
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 Okay, what about the opposite of, like, is there, like, a disliking tendency?
There is, and it's number 3.
Okay, hit me.
Disliking, hating tendency.
Disliking, hating.
Yeah, so just like we're wired for love, we also have this inherent capacity for dislike and hatred.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
And this can lead to all sorts of problems like conflicts, prejudice, discrimination.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just like liking someone can blind us to their faults.
Right.
Disliking someone can make us ignore their virtues.
Oh, yeah.
And fixate only on their negatives.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
Yeah.
Like, how do we stop ourselves from...
It starts with awareness.
Okay.
You know, recognize that you have this tendency and then actively try to, like, counteract it.
Right.
You know, when you find yourself liking someone, make a conscious effort to identify their positive qualities, you know, challenge your own assumptions.
Right, right.
And seek a more balanced perspective.
Good advice, good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to number 4.
Yeah, number 4 is doubt avoidance tendency.
Doubt avoidance. Okay, so that sounds like it's all about our brains wanting to make decisions quickly.
Exactly. Yeah, our minds crave certainty and are often uncomfortable with ambiguity.
Right.
So we tend to jump to conclusions even when we don't have all the information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see how that would have been useful for our ancestors.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're facing a predator, you can't afford to overthink things.
You've got to react.
Yeah. You got to act fast.
Yeah.
But in the modern world, I mean, this tendency can lead to some hasty decisions and bad judgment.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid making those snap judgments that we might later regret?
Well, one strategy is to deliberately delay decision making.
Okay.
Especially for important matters.
Okay.
Give yourself time to gather information.
Right.
Consider different perspectives. Weigh the pros and cons.
So that's where those checklists that Munger talks about come in handy.
Right.
They can kind of help us systematically evaluate things and avoid those impulsive choices.
Checklists are a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. On to number 5. inconsistency avoidance tendency.
Okay.
This one sounds a lot like being set in our ways.
Yeah, so our brains are wired to conserve energy and effort.
Right.
So we resist changing our minds, our habits, our beliefs, even when presented with evidence that contradicts them.
Right, yeah.
It's like that saying, it's harder to turn a tanker than a speedboat.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Right.
Yes.
Our ingrained beliefs can be
really tough to shift.
Incredibly difficult to shift, yeah.
Yeah, this must make it, like, extra hard to learn new things or break bad habits.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also explains why first impressions are so powerful.
Oh, right.
And why it's so crucial to establish good habits early on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from those mental chains and become more open to new information?
It takes conscious effort.
Okay.
And a willingness to challenge your own assumptions.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Seek out diverse perspectives. Expose yourself to new information.
Right.
Be open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
It's easier said than done, right?
It is. It takes effort.
Yeah.
You know? Think about, Charles Darwin.
Oh, yeah?
He actively sought out evidence that contradicted his own theories.
Oh, wow.
Right. And that led to these groundbreaking discoveries.
Oh, that's a great example.
Yeah.
It's inspiring to think about how challenging our own biases can lead to real progress.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 6, curiosity tendency.
Yeah. Curiosity.
This one seems pretty self-explanatory. Humans are curious creatures, right?
We are.
Yeah, we love to explore, learn new things.
Absolutely.
Understand the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Munger sees curiosity as this, powerful antidote to some of those other biases that we've been discussing. It helps us stay open to new information, challenge those assumptions, avoid getting stuck in those mental ruts.
So it's important to nurture that curiosity throughout our lives.
It is.
Yeah.
Keep learning.
Keep exploring, keep asking questions.
Yeah.
Okay, number 7, Kantian fairness tendency. Now, this one sounds like it has to do with our sense of justice.
Yeah, it's the idea that we have this inherent desire for fairness and reciprocity.
Right, so we expect to be treated fairly.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And we tend to treat others fairly in return.
Yeah, like those unwritten rules about letting people merge in traffic.
Yeah.
We're taking turns in line,
Exactly.
It's like those little acts of courtesy that we do.
It reflects this ingrained sense of fairness.
Yeah, okay, but what happens when that sense of fairness is violated?
Oh, we can get pretty upset.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, think about how, indignant we feel when someone, cuts in line or breaks a promise.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And I imagine this tendency can also be exploited, right?
It can.
Like when someone does us a small favor.
Right.
And we feel obligated to reciprocate with something much bigger.
That's the classic reciprocity trap.
The reciprocity trap.
It plays on our desire to be fair.
Yeah.
And it can be used to manipulate us.
Okay, I'm making a note of that one.
Yeah.
Now on to number 8, a bit less cheerful. Envy, jealousy tendency.
Yes, the green-eyed monster.
Right, the green-eyed monster.
This tendency stems from our deep-seated desire for what others have.
Yeah.
Whether it's possessions or status or even relationships.
It's like that Shakespeare quote, comparisons are odorous.
I love that. Yeah.
Like, we can't help but measure ourselves against other people.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes it breeds resentment.
Yeah, and as Munger points out, envy can be a powerful motivator.
Okay. Right.
It can drive people to achieve great things.
Yeah.
But also to engage in destructive behavior.
It's interesting that he highlights this tendency because I feel like it doesn't always get a lot of attention in discussions about human behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not something that people always want to talk about.
Yeah, and that might be because envy is such an uncomfortable emotion to acknowledge.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, in ourselves and in other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a powerful force to be reckoned with.
Okay, so what's the takeaway here? Like, how do we keep envy from, poisoning our thoughts and actions?
I think it starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
Recognize when envy is creeping in.
Right.
And try to reframe your thinking.
Yeah.
Focus on your own goals and achievements and practice gratitude for what you have.
Right. That's good advice. And maybe a little digital detox wouldn't hurt either to avoid all those comparisons on social media.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah. That constant comparison.
The constant comparison. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to number 9, reciprocation tendency, which kind of sounds a lot like
returning a favor.
Returning a favor, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when someone gives us a gift, we feel obligated to give them one in return.
Exactly. And this tendency is so deeply ingrained in our, like, social fabric.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how society works.
Yeah, it's a powerful driver of cooperation and social bonding.
Right.
Yeah.
But I bet it can also be manipulated.
Oh, absolutely.
Like when salespeople offer, like, free samples or discounts to make us feel indebted to them.
That's a classic sales tactic.
Yeah,
that plays directly on our reciprocation tendency.
Oh, I've fallen for that so many times.
We all have.
Yeah.
It can be remarkably effective.
Yeah, so I guess the key here is to be aware of when we're being subtly influenced by this tendency.
Exactly.
Yeah. And to make sure that our actions are, genuinely aligned with our own values.
Yeah. Don't let a sense of obligation drive you to do something that you wouldn't otherwise do.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, on to number 10. Influence from mere association tendency. Now, this one sounds intriguing.
Yeah, so this one is all about how our brains create connections between things, even when those connections might be, like, irrational or misleading.
Oh, okay.
Like associating a product with a celebrity endorsement, even if the celebrity has no expertise in the area.
Exactly. Advertisers love to use this tactic.
Yeah, I see that all the time.
They know that by pairing their product with something positive, like a beautiful model or a catchy jingle, they can influence our perceptions.
It's like those Coke commercials that always show, like, happy smiling people.
Exactly.
They're trying to create that positive association between Coke and feeling good.
They're tapping into our emotions and bypassing our rational thought processes. Exactly, yeah. It's not just about advertising, though, right?
Oh, no.
This tendency shows up in other areas of life as well.
Yeah, Munger talks about how our past successes can mislead us. Because we tend to associate those successes with factors that might have been purely coincidental.
Oh, okay, I see.
Right.
Like that gambler who wins big once and then assumes he's got the system figured out?
Exactly, yeah. Or the investor who makes, like, a lucky bet on a hot stock tip and then believes that they have this, like...
They're an expert.
Yeah, a knack for picking winners.
Yeah. I've definitely been there.
We all have.
Yeah. So I guess the lesson here is to be wary of those lucky streaks.
Yes. Yeah. To always look for the underlying causes of our successes and failures.
Don't let mere association cloud our judgment.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, next up, number 11. Simple, pain-avoiding psychological denial.
Ooh.
I have a feeling this one's going to be a little heavy.
Yeah, this tendency is all about our brain's ability to protect us from painful realities by simply refusing to acknowledge them.
Okay, yeah.
It's a defense mechanism, right?
Right.
But one that can have serious consequences if it's taken too far.
Like those families who refuse to believe their loved one is missing even years after they've disappeared.
Exactly. We cling to hope, even when the evidence suggests otherwise.
Right.
While it's understandable to want to protect ourselves from pain,
of course,
this kind of denial can prevent us from
taking
necessary actions or moving on in a healthy way.
Right. So how do we strike a balance?
Yeah.
How do we strike a balance between protecting ourselves from that emotional pain, but also facing reality?
It's a delicate dance and one that often requires support from others.
Okay.
Therapy, support groups.
Right.
Trusted friends.
Right.
Can all help us process those difficult emotions and gradually come to terms with those painful truths.
That's a really good point, and it's important to have a support system in place.
Yeah.
Especially when dealing with challenging situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I guess, denial isn't always a bad thing.
It isn't.
Right. Sometimes it can give us the strength to persevere.
It can.
Yeah. Through tough times. But it's crucial to recognize when denial has become unhealthy.
Right.
Yeah,
and is preventing us from moving forward.
Yeah, when it's no longer serving you.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. On to number 12, excessive self-regard tendency. This one sounds like it's all about having a high opinion of ourselves.
Yeah, most people tend to overestimate their abilities, their attractiveness, even their future prospects.
Right.
It's part of that.
That optimism bias.
Yeah, that inherent optimism bias.
Right, we all have.
That's wired into us. It's like those surveys where Like 90% of people believe they're above average drivers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We all have a tendency to see ourselves in a positive light, and sometimes that can lead to overconfidence and poor decision-making.
Right. I can see how this tendency could play a role in things like investing, where people might overestimate their ability to, pick winning stocks.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And it can also lead to bad hiring decisions where, like, interviewers are more swayed by, like, a candidate's charisma than their actual qualifications.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
It's like, oh, they seem like a great guy. They must be good at their job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess the key here is to temper our self-confidence with a healthy dose of realism.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seek out objective feedback.
Right.
Be willing to acknowledge your weaknesses.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Great advice. Great advice.
Yeah.
Okay, up next, number 13, over-optimism tendency. Now, this one sounds kind of similar to the last one.
It is related,
okay,
but there's a subtle difference.
Okay, what is it?
Over-optimism tendency is about our tendency to overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes, even when the odds are stacked against us.
Oh, okay, so like those lottery players who are convinced their numbers will finally come up.
Exactly. They focus on the potential reward and downplay the very real probability of losing.
Oh, so it can also lead to procrastination.
Well, you can.
Yeah, like we might overestimate the amount of time we have to complete a task and then end up scrambling at the last minute.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can also lead to, like, risky behavior, like starting a business without a solid plan.
Yeah.
Or making a large purchase without considering the financial consequences.
So how do we avoid falling into this over-optimistic trap?
One strategy is to deliberately challenge your assumptions and look for the potential downsides.
Okay.
Consider the worst case scenarios and develop contingency plans.
All right, so it's like a reality check.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, on to number 14, deprival super reaction tendency. I'm not sure I've heard of this one before.
This tendency is all about our outsized reaction to losses.
Oh, okay.
So we feel the pain of a loss much more intensely than the pleasure of an equivalent gain.
It's like that saying, it hurts more to lose $100 than it feels good to find $100.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're wired to avoid losses.
Okay.
And this can sometimes lead to irrational behavior.
Yeah, I can see how this could play a role in things like investing, where people might hold on to losing stocks for way too long, just hoping to avoid that loss.
Absolutely. Or they might double down on a bad bet, hoping to recoup their losses even when it's not the most rational decision.
Yeah, it's like throwing good money after bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how do we avoid letting this fear of loss drive our decisions?
Well, it's important to be aware of this tendency and to make decisions based on, a rational assessment of the situation rather than letting our emotions get the better of us.
Right. So keep a cool head.
Keep a cool head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on to number 15, social proof tendency.
Okay, this one is all about our natural inclination to conform to the behavior of those around us.
Oh, okay.
So we look to others for cues on how to act,
okay,
especially in unfamiliar situations.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So like when you're at a concert and everyone starts clapping, you start clapping too.
Yeah.
Even if you weren't sure if it was the right time to clap.
Exactly. Or when you're walking down the street and you see a group of people looking up, you look up too, even if you have no idea what they're looking at.
Yeah, it's like our brains are wired to follow the crowd.
In many ways they are.
Yeah.
And while this can be a helpful shortcut in some situations, it can also lead us astray, especially when the crowd is wrong.
Oh, yeah, like those historical examples of financial bubbles where everyone gets caught up in the hype and ends up losing money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or think about those fashion trends that we look back on and wonder, what were we thinking?
Yeah. Oh, so many fashion regrets.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the key here is to be aware of that power of social influence.
It is powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And make sure we're not just blindly following the herd.
Exactly. Think critically, question assumptions. Yeah. Be willing to stand out from the crowd when it's the right thing to do.
Great advice. Great advice.
Yeah.
All right, up next is number 16, contrast misreaction tendency.
Okay.
This one sounds like it has to do with how we perceive things in relation to each other.
You got it. So our brains are constantly making comparisons.
Right.
And our perceptions are influenced by the context in which things are presented.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So like when you go shopping and you see an item marked down from like a ridiculously high price.
Yes.
It makes that sale price seem like a steal, even if it's still overpriced.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Retailers love to use this tactic to manipulate our perceptions of value.
I've fallen for that so many times.
We all have.
Yeah.
And it can be very effective.
Yeah. So I guess the lesson here is to be aware of the power of contrast.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to focus on the absolute value of things.
Okay.
Rather than their relative value.
Right, right. Don't let those clever marketing tricks sway your judgment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're making great progress. On to number 17, stress influence tendency.
Yes, stress. Everyone knows that.
Everyone knows stress is bad for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It can impair our judgment.
Right.
Lead to poor decision making.
Yeah, when you're stressed, you don't think straight.
No, you don't.
Yeah.
But Munger goes
Yes.
he goes deeper into this,
Yeah.
exploring the work of this famous physiologist Pavlov. Wait, Pavlov.
Yes.
As in Pavlov's dogs.
The very same.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in his later years, Pavlov, he delved into the effects of like extreme stress on the nervous system.
Okay.
And his findings are both fascinating and disturbing.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but also a little worried about where this is going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so Pavlov discovered that prolonged, intense stress could actually lead to a complete breakdown of conditioned responses in his dogs.
Whoa. So like they were having mental breakdowns.
Essentially, yeah.
That's heavy stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
And what's even more disturbing is that he found that the only way to like reverse these breakdowns was to reimpose stress.
Oh, wow. So it's like a vicious cycle.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty profound.
It is.
That makes you think about like the resilience of the human mind and the potential long-term effects of trauma.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it raises some profound questions. Yeah, I can see why Munger included this in his list.
Yeah.
It's a stark reminder that our minds are not invincible.
They're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that we need to protect ourselves from
prolonged intense stress.
Yeah, prolonged intense stress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and while Pavlov's methods, they would probably be considered unethical today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His findings still offer, valuable insights.
They do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the limits of human resilience and the importance of self-care and stress management.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, on to number 18, availability misweighing tendency. This one sounds like it's all about like how easily we can recall information.
Exactly.
Right.
Our brains tend to overemphasize information that is readily available to us, whether it's because it's recent, vivid, or emotionally charged.
Oh, okay. Like when we hear about a plane crash on the news and suddenly we're terrified of flying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even though, statistically, it's still one of the safest modes of transportation.
It's like that vividness of the news story just makes it feel more likely.
Exactly.
Yeah, even though it's statistically rare.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess the key here is to be aware of this tendency and to seek out a more balanced perspective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Take into account all the relevant information.
Yeah. Just what's
easily accessible to our minds.
top of mind.
Right. Okay, we're on a roll. Number 19, use it or lose it tendency.
Okay. This one is all about the importance of practice.
Okay.
Right? Any skill, whether it's playing the piano or speaking a language or even critical thinking, will atrophy if we don't use it regularly.
It's like that old saying, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah, and Munger emphasizes the importance of lifelong learning and continuous skill development.
Right.
He compares it to the training of pilots.
Who use simulators to practice rarely used but essential skills.
Right.
Right.
So the lesson here is to never stop learning.
Never stop learning.
Yeah. And to make a conscious effort to keep our skills sharp.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even the ones that we don't use every day.
The ones that get a little rusty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, on to number 20, drug misinfluence tendency. I think we can all agree that drugs can impair our judgment.
Yes, this one's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Munger's simply highlighting the profound impact that drugs can have on our cognitive abilities and decision making.
It's a good reminder to be mindful of, the substances we put into our bodies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to seek help if we're struggling with addiction.
Right, because substance abuse, it can have devastating consequences.
It can.
Yeah, for individuals and for society as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to number 21.
Senescence misinfluence tendency.
Senescence misinfluence tendency, okay.
This one is all about the cognitive changes that come with aging.
So, like, as we get older, our brains naturally slow down a bit. Is that what he's getting at?
Exactly, yeah. He's not suggesting that we all become, senile.
Right.
But he does point out that our ability to learn new things and adapt to change can decline as we age.
Right. So this could be a problem if we're not careful.
It can.
Yeah. We might become, like, stuck in our ways and resistant to new ideas.
Exactly. And that's why Munger, he stresses the importance of lifelong learning and staying mentally active.
Right.
Even as we get older.
Yeah.
He compares it to physical exercise. Just like our bodies need regular workouts to stay healthy. Our brains need mental stimulation to stay sharp.
So things like reading, learning new skills, engaging in, like, challenging conversations.
Exactly.
Those can help keep our minds in shape.
Absolutely. And it's never too late to start.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Okay, on to number 22. Authority misinfluence tendency. Now, we touched on this a bit earlier.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So this bias is all about our tendency to defer to authority figures, even when they might be wrong.
Right. It's like that old saying, just following orders.
Exactly.
But I mean, that can be really dangerous if those orders are, leading us down the wrong path.
It can be, yeah. And Munger points out that this bias can be especially strong when we're under stress or feeling uncertain.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. So if I'm in, like, a high pressure situation, I might be more likely to just blindly follow the instructions of, someone in charge.
Right.
Even those instructions don't really make sense to me.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to cultivate critical thinking skills.
Right.
And to be willing to, question authority when necessary.
So how do we strike that balance? Like, how do we balance respecting authority, but also thinking for ourselves?
Yeah. It's about asking questions.
Okay.
Seeking clarification.
Right.
Using your own judgment.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to push back if something doesn't feel right, even if it's coming from someone you respect.
Okay. That makes sense. On to number 23, twaddle tendency. We talked about this one earlier as well.
Yes.
But I'd love to hear more about those honeybees.
Right. So remember, the researchers, they tricked the honeybee into finding nectar directly above the hive, something that it wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
And then the bee got all confused when it tried to communicate the location to the other bees.
Exactly.
And Munger uses this example to illustrate how we humans often complicate things unnecessarily.
Okay.
Right. We create these elaborate systems and processes that make things more confusing.
Right. So instead of just finding the simplest solution, we get lost in this maze of complexity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the lesson here, strive for simplicity.
Strive for simplicity.
Don't overthink things.
Keep it simple.
Yeah. Sometimes the most straightforward solution is the best.
It often is.
Yeah. Okay. On to number 24, reason-respecting tendency. Now, this one kind of sounds like almost like the flip side of authority misinfluence.
You're right. There is a connection there.
Okay.
So this bias is all about our tendency to be more persuaded by arguments that include reasons, even if those reasons aren't particularly strong.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So if someone's trying to convince me of something, I'm more likely to believe them if they give me a reason.
Exactly.
Even if it's kind of a flimsy one.
Even if it's flimsy, yeah. And marketers and salespeople know this.
I bet they do.
Yeah.
Which is why they often include reasons in their pitches.
Right.
Even if those reasons are, like, irrelevant.
Yeah.
Or misleading.
It's like those ads that say, buy this product because it's new and improved.
Exactly.
But that doesn't really tell me anything.
Doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah. Okay, so be wary.
Be wary of those who try to manipulate us with reasons.
Right. Always ask yourself, are those reasons actually valid?
Exactly.
Are they relevant?
Yeah.
Okay, we've arrived at the final bias on Munger's list, number 25, lollapalooza tendency.
Okay.
Now, we discussed this one earlier in the context of the Westinghouse loan officers.
Yes.
But I'm kind of curious to hear more about how this tendency plays out in other areas of life.
Yeah, so remember, the lollapalooza effect is all about the power of multiple biases
Right.
converging to
Yeah.
create these extreme outcomes.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
And this can happen
Yeah.
in any area of life
Yeah.
where our decisions are influenced by emotions or social pressure
Yeah.
or ingrained habits.
Right. So it's not just about financial decisions, but also like personal relationships,
Exactly.
career choices, even political beliefs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say you're trying to decide whether to um, stay in a job
Okay.
that's no longer fulfilling you.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. You might be influenced by inconsistency avoidance tendency,
Right.
which makes you resistant to change.
Yeah. I don't want to rock the boat.
Right. At the same time,
Yeah.
you might be feeling social proof tendency
Okay.
as you see your colleagues staying put
Right.
and assume it's the right thing to do.
Right. If everyone else is doing it, it must be okay.
Exactly. And maybe there's even a bit of deprival superreaction tendency mixed in
Okay.
as you're afraid of losing the security and the benefits of your current job,
Even if I'm unhappy.
even if you're unhappy.
Yeah.
So it's like all these biases are like working together to keep me
Keep
stuck.
ganging up on you.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to be aware of this tendency and to develop strategies for counteracting it.
So if I find myself in one of those situations where I'm just like, I'm feeling pulled in multiple directions, take a step back.
Take a step back and really examine which biases might be at play.
Okay, and ask myself, what are my motivations?
Exactly.
Am I being influenced by, fear or social pressure or the desire for a reward?
Exactly. Yeah.
Am I looking at all the available information?
Yeah.
Or am I just kind of focusing on the things that confirm what I already believe?
Yeah, those are great questions to ask.
Okay, so we've covered all 25 of Munger's cognitive biases. What are some final takeaways we can use to outsmart our brains and just, make better choices in life?
I think first and foremost, remember that these biases, they're not flaws or weaknesses. They're simply part of being human.
It's not about trying to eliminate them completely.
It's not. No, it's about
becoming aware of them.
becoming aware.
Yeah.
And learning to manage their influence.
Right. And the more we understand these biases, the better equipped we are to make those rational decisions.
Absolutely.
Build stronger relationships.
Yeah.
And ultimately live, more fulfilling lives.
Yes, I agree.
This has been so insightful. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how my mind works.
It's fascinating stuff.
It is. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And, all the mental traps that I need to kind of watch out for.
Absolutely.
So, to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thank you.
Into the fascinating world of cognitive biases. We hope you've enjoyed the journey as much as we have.
Yes.
And remember, knowledge is power, and the more you understand about how your mind works, the better equipped you are to make those choices that lead to a happier, healthier, and more successful life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.